Hey guys!
Hey!
Welcome back to yet another episode. No longer self-isolation. We're done with that. We're going to deep dive into a few more topics. Today's topic is cultural differences.
Yes.
I'll get to why in just a second. We'll talk about how culture in general, is being developed. And Layla and I have prepared a few questions for one another, speaking about cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
So we will touch that a little bit later.
We have an awesome rapid round as well.
That's your idea.
That's my idea.
That's your idea. So we're going to, from now on, about the topics that we speak each week, prepare rapid fire questions. So what it means is like quick questions and short answers about the topic that we're speaking about.
And we don't know
what we've prepped. So we're going to test it out today and we're going to continue week by week. Before we start, you have had your first group classes.
I did. Oh, it was so good. So today I taught my first group fitness class. It was body toning. Oh, it was so good. Even though there was just 6 people, you wasn't allowed to have any more. But it was just good to teach in front of a group and get that fire going from the customers.
Always obeying the safety rules and measures, I guess.
Of course, on the floor there was with big tape, like masking tape. Everybody had their box. You're not allowed to step out the box. It's 2 meters squared. I had to teach facing towards the mirror. I'm not allowed to teach directly to the customers, which was quite hard for me. And also, I'm not allowed to touch people.
Not allowed to correct them.
Not
physically anyway.
Not allowed to physically correct them. So it's more verbal correction. So.
Did you have to wear one of these fellas?
No, I did not, because of these boxes that we had to stay in, we could keep our 2 meter distance from each other.
All right. The mask is actually the reason for today's video. When you think of cultural differences, you might not think of this bad boy, but I'll explain in just a second. We might think of cultural differences as in, you're from England, I was born and raised in Switzerland. There might be cultural differences in how we behave, how we, answer the phone call, how we greet a person. There are definitely cultural differences, but what got me thinking about today's topic was, among others, this little bad boy, because I've been reading the news and how this might be the new normal when you step onto a tram, the train, or when you get ill yourself, that maybe this will be normal in the future in this part of the world to wear a mask. Now, in other cultures, it is completely normal to do so. So I've read in China, when the air pollution is high, they wear a mask. When you're ill yourself, to prevent others to get ill. We saw it in Japan and Hong Kong.
Exactly, yeah.
It's quite normal there to see a lot of people with masks. No second looks, as we're here. I feel as though as soon as you go out of the city, people give you a bit of an evil eye, a bit of a crazy look.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, okay, could that actually change? And that has to do with the change of cultural behavior. And because I studied communication and I sort of specified in intercultural management and communication, where culture and cultural differences are obviously big topics, we wanted to quickly speak about a little bit, or scratch the surface a little bit about cultural differences. Before we get to the questions, however, we need to quickly cover how culture is actually being developed. So before we start speaking about cultural differences, we need to ask ourselves, what is culture to begin with? Now, it goes without saying that culture, communication, intercultural communication, and cultural differences are huge topics and is a massive playground to be explored. And it would be very daring for me to say that I can cover it within the next 5 minutes. However, I thought I'll just share with you one concept that I remember quite vividly from my time studying communication, specifically intercultural management. One definition for culture that stuck with me was, culture is the collective programming of the mind which distinguishes the members of one group from another. This quote stems from Dutch social psychologist Gert Hofstede. His book, Culture's Consequences, received great attention and was used by many multinational corporations when they had to adopt their management styles in different countries. We will elaborate what he means by programming of the mind in just a second. Hofstede continues, culture in this sense includes systems of values, and values are among the building blocks of culture. Now, we can illustrate what he means by these building blocks using the following concept. We're going to draw a pyramid. I like my pyramids. That pyramid is going to be divided up into 3 layers. The bottom layer is something that we all have in common. No matter where you are in the world, no matter what nationality, no matter what language, no matter what religion, we all share one thing, and that is human nature. The foundation, the base of all culture. That is something that we have inherited, and it applies to everyone and is therefore universal. Human nature can include aspects like fear, joy, the need to be with other people, much like the first 3 layers in the Maslow pyramid. Similar to the Maslow pyramid, these building blocks build upon each other as well. The next layer explains what he means by programming of the mind, culture that is learned. We learn our values by the people around us, starting with our parents, when you go to school, the country that you were raised in, the language that you speak, that can be high in context or low in context. That is very specific to groups, to categories, to nationalities, even to different regions. And lastly is your personality, which evolves from both what we have inherited and how we feel about it, as well as what we've learned. And that is very specific to individuals. So I believe this graphic, while being quite simple, shows yet very effectively how culture is being developed. You can see it from a young age. When you go to school, your parents, they obviously influence what you believe is right or wrong, what your values and beliefs are. You then move on and go to university, to college, you do an apprenticeship, you go to work, and you're being influenced by your social environment. And then you obviously have your friends and your personal own opinion, which can change from time to time and probably inevitably will change from time to time as well. And these 2 top layers quite easily show what we believe is right or wrong because of what we've learned. And if you think about this little thing, I told you this is what triggered to do this video with me. It's not very common to wear a face mask in public, on public transportation, here in Switzerland. At the moment, we're being asked to wear a face mask should we not be able to keep a safe distance, for instance, on a tram, which is already pretty narrow. Personally, I don't have a problem with wearing a face mask, but you can see on the tram that people don't really wear a face mask. I'm not sure this is because they don't want to, because it's not something that we're used to. Me personally, I think of a hospital when I see a face mask, and maybe many people believe the same thing and they have like a negative connotation with it. However, this might change over generations, and I thought it's an interesting topic to see and discover maybe why it is that we here in Switzerland don't really wear face masks. Yet when you go to Asian countries such as Japan or China or Hong Kong, it is quite common to see people with face masks and no one gives you a second look, as where here we have observed that, you know, when you wear a face mask, people look at you quite interestingly. So to summarize what culture is, or what it could be, culture is a system of knowledge shared by a group. As we saw in the pyramid, we are being influenced in what we believe is right or wrong, what our values and beliefs are, and we learn all of this on our journey through the people that we meet, through the people that we spend our time with, as well as our personal opinion about certain topics. Therefore, culture is the result of social learning. And lastly, communication is an easily observed cultural pattern, or as the American anthropologist Edward T. Hall says, culture is communication and communication is culture. So, hey guys.
Hey.
After we showed you like how culture is being developed a little bit, we wanted to give you a little bit of an insight about cultural differences that you experienced when you came to Switzerland, just as a little fun way to wrap this video up, before we then move on to Layla's brilliant idea to do rapid fire questions.
Oh yeah.
So to begin with, we have prepared 3 questions for one another. So I'm gonna start with asking Layla 3 questions about cultural differences that she may or may not have come across when she moved to Switzerland. How long ago is that now?
It's going to be 10 years in October.
You're almost Swiss now.
Right.
Eligible for the passport.
Technically, or that.
Right, ordered. Question number 1. What are the obvious cultural differences you noticed when you first came to Switzerland?
The first things I actually noticed was the Swiss transportation. That was mind-blowing. Everything is on time and it works like clockwork. I could easily get used to that, and in fact, I did get used to that.
A little bit too easy, I guess.
A little bit too easy. Another thing that I actually did notice, which I actually quite struggled at the beginning, was that people aren't as open in comparison to English people. I feel as though the Swiss people are a little bit more closed compared to us Brits. We go to an empty toilet and come out with a friend, basically. So I just missed that openness when I did move to Switzerland about 10 years ago.
I can actually confirm that. I lived in the UK for roughly a year. That sounds about right. And also, picking up on that point with the transportation system, do you also agree, as much as the transportation system works clockwise, it sort of resembles how the people function here as well? Right?
Yeah, correct.
If something goes out of line, people already lose their bit of structure because, we are trained to do clockwork.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a little bit, not that it's a negative, it's actually quite good, but it's just an interesting observation I think I made over the years.
Yeah. And one more thing that I actually did notice when I moved to Switzerland at the beginning was that you don't go to a person's house unannounced. So you've got to kind of pre-warn them if you're going to pop by. In England, you go round to someone's for a cup of tea and a biscuit. Just randomly, just knock on the door and say, hey, do you fancy a cuppa? But here it's not very
common, right? It's also very common to schedule when you see your friends, which even I, who is born and raised in Switzerland, even I find that weird. That you have to schedule when to see your friends, just because otherwise you won't find time, and you want to make sure, house is clean, food is prepped, whatever. Just a spontaneous drop in is a bit of a no-no, I would say. Anything else you want to add?
Till now, so far so good.
So far so good. Alright, moving on to question number 2. What cultural habits did you adapt to over the years without realizing at first?
The first one that comes to my head, as Mark mentioned, the Swiss transportation works like clockwork. And like you said before, people get a bit agitated when it just doesn't go quite right. I am one of them. It took me, a few weeks. So for example, if my tram is 2 minutes late, I start to look down the road. Where's my tram? Oh yeah, I'm terrible. I'm the one.
2 minutes late. Where is it?
I'm the one leaning over the street and looking down to see if that tram's coming or not.
Brilliant.
That's me.
Yeah. That does sound very local.
Yeah.
So I remember 2-3 years ago there was something about the Swiss national rail system that in average 87% of the trains were late. It might even be older, but when they say late they obviously include 1 minute. And 1 minute is per definition late. So but yeah, that's a level on which we complain.
Yeah. Another thing that I've developed over the years is I constantly cheers with people now.
Oh, yes.
So over lunch, over dinner, and sometimes it sounds stupid, even over breakfast, I cheers with a cup of tea. In Switzerland, it's very known to say Prost.
Yeah, some more.
Some more.
To your health. Interesting.
And in England, you do that on special occasions, so weddings, birthdays, or big family get-together. You don't constantly do it. And now, when I go to England, my parents are like, oh God, again, yeah, cheers, cheers, cheers. Open another bottle of wine, cheers.
In that regard, two additional notes, now that you mention it. So one, very close, but yet different, let's say, culture, country, Germany. So I had a colleague from the southern part of Germany, which is very close to Switzerland, and he told me, that was interesting, he said, it was weird when coming to Switzerland, we cheers people as well, but we mention one another's name. Hey Layla, cheers. Hey Mark, cheers. And he said, I didn't know that you did that. It's like, that was interesting. Pretty much all of our American friends have adopted now. It means nothing without eye contact.
Yes, of course, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, it means nothing without eye contact. So every time we go to the States and visit our friends, they make like googly eyes, like just to make sure that
like,
they
cheers.
actually look.
Cheers.
Yes, cheers. Yes, I mean it. That is funny.
That's true.
Oh yeah, that is very, very important here. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And another thing that I adapted pretty fast, I love my snowboarding anyway, and yeah, mountains an hour away from here.
Yeah.
Super fortunate. Just go riding in the winter because you can.
Because you can. Like, so we did it a couple of times. I remember, like not last season, not this season that just passed, but the one before, where we just took off the morning off work. You didn't have anything, I didn't have anything, so I just took the morning off work, spontaneously called my boss and said I'm not in until lunch. Quickly went up, had a half-day ticket and went riding.
And came back down after lunch.
Funny though, it took her, the English girl, to get me back into snowboarding.
Oh yeah, you heard that right.
Fun fact, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because everyone in Switzerland, they either ski or snowboard. Everyone knows how to do it.
I don't think everyone does, but I think everyone learned how to.
I think you learn how to ski or snowboard before you can run. Almost.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Anything else?
I think that is it.
Perfect. Which cultural aspects do you miss most from England, and which ones would you miss from here if you were to move away?
Okay, so firstly, what I miss from England is the humour, the dry sense of humour, the English humour.
Are you saying we're not funny?
No, I do miss that, I gotta say. Just, English people are known for their dry sense of humour and the joking. And the lads, they're quite confident as
Charming.
well. Charming. The English lads are very charming. Yeah, that's the first thing that I miss from England. Also, what I do miss is spontaneous going around for a cuppa. I do miss that.
She says cuppa, she means a cup of tea.
Oh, a cup of black tea. My Yorkshire tea that you see in the videos.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else?
I think so far so good.
So, what would you miss from Switzerland if you were to move away, now that you lived here for 10 years?
How close the mountains are. I would miss, in Switzerland we have quite strong seasons as well. Super hot summers and cold winters.
Yeah. Super hot summers, yeah. In the meantime, yeah, the last 3 years were quite mind-blowing.
35, 37 degrees in Celsius. What is that, like 90s? Something
Yeah.
like that, 90, 95.
In Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Also, another thing that I would miss from Switzerland is, especially when you're in Zurich, you hear so many languages. And you hear people like in the back of your ear. So you hear Italians, you hear the French, you hear the English, the Swiss themselves, the Germans, and I would actually miss hearing all the different languages. If that makes sense. The Spanish.
Yeah. That
Eastern
does
European.
That does make sense. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one last thing that I would really, really miss. We have a kick-ass Christmas market in Zurich. We have an awesome Christmas market. Oh, yeah.
I mean, anyone watching this from Germany will be like, should have come to our Christmas market. Same for Austria. They all have great Christmas markets. We just enjoy ours.
Because it's ours.
Yeah, that is a good point. Christmas markets in the German-speaking world are huge and really, really cool. It's a good thing to do. It gets people out when it's cold, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a nice build-up to Christmas to anyone who celebrates Christmas. And actually, even if you don't, it's still a good place to hang out and have little goodies and
have your mulled wine, mulled cider, and pack the chestnuts. Oh.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
Obviously, there's way more to say and to deep dive, but I just wanted to try and keep it as short as we can. We have a tendency to babble, as you saw in the bloopers.
Yes, babble, 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 babble.
So, what do you got for me?
Right, 3 questions. Okay, question 2, Mark. You are born and bred in Switzerland and was raised speaking both fluently English and German. Which language do you feel as though you can express yourself better and why?
Okay, before I answer the question, just so people know, my mum is from New Zealand. Hence why I was raised English speaking, but even my dad spoke English to me until I went to school. And to answer your question, that is a tricky one because I do believe that I express myself better in English in a conversation on a private basis. I think if it comes to a professional level, I can definitely easily switch to English and communicate. However, because I studied, or I am just finishing up studying in Germany in engineering, and obviously a lot of literature is in German, I think I know professional terms a lot quicker in German, which makes sense because I've worked in this area for so many years. I feel quite comfortable in both, but I think it depends on the professional or private level. I think I find a way to express myself quicker in English than I do in German, if that makes sense. That's pretty much it.
Very well answered, Mr. Ackerman.
Thank you very much.
Next question. 2 years ago, we were fortunate enough to travel to Australia and New Zealand for 3 months. As you are half Swiss and half Kiwi, New Zealand, was there any...
What is that, New Zealand? Kiwi is New Zealand.
Well, if people don't know what Kiwi is. As you are half Swiss and half Kiwi, was there any major cultural similarities or differences that you instantly noticed between the Kiwis and the Swiss?
Yes, there were definitely similarities and there were differences, huge differences. But it's an interesting question. So I share blood with both the countries, New Zealand. I technically get the best parts of both worlds. I would say when we went there, the similarities were both cultures, both nationalities, if you will, are very outdoorsy. So the Swiss like to be out, so do the Kiwis, that's my observation. Maybe also a little harder to crack to get into a group. So not like we're difficult. I would say the Kiwi is more open than the Swiss. But in general, I'd say both are a bit more harder to break into the circle of trust, if you will. But once you're in, you're in. I'd say...
It's like a coconut.
It's like a coconut. It's hard to get in, but the inside is very enjoyable, they say. The Swiss are like coconut. Not sure you can say that about Kiwi, but yeah. One very big difference was, I do think Kiwis are a lot more laid back than the Swiss. You know, we are very trimmed.
Swiss.
Yeah, very, very, like we said earlier, clockwise. I do believe there is some sort of connection between the two countries. It may have to do, we both got Alps, you know, both Switzerland and New Zealand got Alps. We both like our outdoors. And there's also a lot of, I've met a lot of people who either move from Switzerland to New Zealand or the other way around. They feel comfortable in one another way. What makes New Zealand a bit attractive, I think, is the different sort of climates and having the sea. We're landlocked here in Switzerland. We don't have a beach or whatever. So I think that is also maybe a reason, an explanation why Kiwis are a bit more laid back. But other than that, probably would have had to spend more time down there to see. And also, yes, one thing that we both have in common, very, very important, is something that I actually realized for myself that I think is very important to myself and is one of my big cornerstones, my values. that is simplicity. I felt as though that spending time with my family in Paraparaumu near Wellington, we in New Zealand as well as Switzerland like simple things. It doesn't have to be flashy or a lot of materialistic stuff. You get these type of groups that like materialistic stuff, but I think in general a lot of Kiwis like to live quite simple, if I think of my family anyway. And the same applies to my Swiss family. There's a very similarity. We like to have,
that is so true.
right? So simple but high quality, let's just say. Good times together, doesn't have to be flashy or whatever. Simplicity, I think, applies to both. I mean, anyone disagreeing, let me know, but that was my impression for both cultures.
Wow, well answered. Not bad.
Thank you.
Third and last question is actually the same question what you asked me. If you were to move away from Switzerland, which cultural aspect would you miss the most from Switzerland?
Okay, the first one would have to be something that you mentioned already. I would call it, and that applies specifically to Zurich. I know it applies maybe to Geneva, Lucerne, Bern as well, wherever you have a mixture, like a cultural or a multicultural hub. Multiculti. I personally would miss the diversity that we have here in Zurich, because it leads to getting rid of prejudice, if you will. You step on a tram here in Zurich, or you used to work in a coffee shop, and you greet a person that does not obviously look Swiss, but then he or she opens his or her mouth and they sound more Swiss than I do. And I think it's always so refreshing to see that you can't have this sort of prejudice that you are not from here. It's like, oh no, I am from here as much as you are. And I like that a lot about Zurich. That's a very cool thing, that this is such a multicultural hub. I think this is a thing that you have in a lot of cities, but given that Switzerland is a fairly small place, it's a very multicultural place. And linked in with that is my second point is, I think Switzerland benefits from the best of every country around. So you have Germany, Austria, France and Italy. I think what we have is a perfect balance of all these countries. So for instance, I'd say I work a lot in Germany, when I look at my German colleagues, it's very efficient, very, clear and get it done. I think the Swiss have adopted a lot of that into their lives, being on time, being punctual, making stuff happen. I find the Austrians to be very charming. You would notice that if you ever go to Austria, Austrians are such nice people, very welcoming. Same again as with the Germans, they are a bit efficient. We share that, I think. But we share something with the Austrians. I think that goes all along the Alpine region, a bit more laid back, as opposed to the further north you go, the more it is a bit more, I wouldn't say clockwork, but efficiency driven. But what we then get from the south is the enjoyment when it comes to food, or when it comes to socializing. We like to socialize, and for instance, good example are our lunch breaks. So the further north you go, that was my experience, lunch is just a means to an end. You sit down in your canteen, you shovel down your food and you get back to work. Here, and many German colleagues have already commented on that when they came and visit me, we actually go to a place and we sit down and we have lunch and we enjoy it. It is what I call the holy hour. My former boss had to get quickly customized to the idea that I don't pick up my phone from 12 to 1 o'clock. That is the time for me to take a break, to enjoy my food, because food is not just, a means to an end. For me, food is a celebration, and I do believe, and I think it's a fact, that this is an influence from the French and the Italians, that the further south you go, if you go to the Italian part of Switzerland, the lunch break will probably be even longer, but we actually do go to a place and enjoy our lunch breaks. We enjoy having food in a social group. So we get the mixture of, I think, the combination of all these countries around. So we make stuff happen, we are efficient and we are effective with that balance of enjoying like good food, good coffee. Coffee's great here, thank you Italy. We have a big influence in terms of cuisine, I guess, from the French and the Italian as well, and we like to enjoy it. So that's something that I think is a big part that I would potentially miss moving away from here. Then, having said that, you know, there is good aspects, I think, if you were to go somewhere else that you would probably easily get accustomed to. You just talked about that yourself. That was a very lengthy explanation. I hope you enjoyed that.
It rolled off the tongue.
Yeah, that was not rehearsed.
Wow.
All right, so we're wrapping these up. We do finish up this episode with a few rapid fire questions, which is Layla's idea. So we'll take you to the rapid fire questions. Right, so to wrap this whole thing up now, Layla has come up with an idea for every week, and that would be, we call it rapid fire. You explain, it's your idea.
Okay, my idea. So, a rapid fire. Today we're just going to fire each other 5 questions back to back. So I give 5 questions, Mark will give 5 questions. You have 2 possible answers. There's no right or wrong, but gotta be fast, super fast.
Dreading this already.
And
Why did I say yes?
And we don't know each other's questions.
Yeah, right. Ladies first, you're gonna start.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
3, 2.
I'm getting nervous. Right, go on.
3, 2, 1. Let's go. Lake or mountains?
Lake.
Handshake or no handshake?
Handshake.
Winter snow or summer heat?
Summer heat.
Bündner or Bern that accent?
Bündner.
When entering someone's house, shoes off or shoes on?
Shoes off. I don't really care, but I would just go with shoes off. Right. Okay,
Ooh,
that was
awesome.
cool. Alright, so
Okay.
that is actually quite good. I have 5 for you as well,
Okay.
and we'll see how you do. Alright, ready? 3, 2, 1, let's go. Shorts to work. Okay, you're unprofessional.
Unprofessional.
3 kisses or 1 to greet a person.
What?
3 kisses or 1 to greet a person.
3.
Speak about private problems at work. Okay or unnecessary?
Okay.
Face mask when you're ill. Yes or no?
Yes.
When writing an email, open with an icebreaker or straight to the point?
Icebreaker.
Well done!
I'm quite surprised with some of my answers actually.
Right?
Yeah.
I was a bit like, oh god, what's she going to ask me? But I think I did okay.
I like
Apart
it.
from the shoes off or not. Let us know what you think to this. Next week we'll definitely do that again.
Yeah.
Speaking of next week, one way that Layla and I enjoy to soak up another culture is while eating or having a drink in a bar and a restaurant. This is where we think we get to know most people and get to learn most about a specific culture. So because we don't travel, and we won't travel much this year apart from domestic in Switzerland, we thought we'll bring to you what we would advise you or would recommend you to have like in food and drinks when you do come to Switzerland. So in next week's episode, we're going to give you a rundown from morning to evening, what we would recommend you trying out when you visit Switzerland next. Until then, I guess that's been it for today. See you next week.
Bye.